What evil lurks in the dark? A question we have all asked ourselves many times. Together, we can start uncovering the truth and mystery behind the darker side of the otherworldly. And now your host of See You in the Dark, Michelle Roos.
Well, good evening to you all, and thank you for joining me on another episode of See You in the Dark. Sorry if I sound a little stuffy today. I guess my allergies are just kind of working overtime, but we'll still make this show a great one. Tonight, I've got a special guest on, talking to another paranormal group or groups is always really amazing for me because you learn different techniques that they might use or the way they look at things compared to ourselves. Like me, I do different things, but also finding out a commonality with all of us. And I met this guest at, it was like a metaphysical paracon type of thing, and just kind of hit it off with talking and some of the interesting things that we talked about. And I'm like, definitely need to have this person on the show. Tonight's guest is Mr. Shawn Ellis. He is the founder, owner, and lead investigator of the Eternal X Wolfpack Paranormal. Now, he doesn't just have this paranormal team, but he's also a host at the Eternal X Wolfpack Paranormal podcast. So he's definitely knows a little bit about both sides. Without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Shawn Ellis. How are you,
Hello,
sir?
Michelle. I'm doing
How
fine. How are
are
you?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you for joining me tonight. Super excited to have
Thanks for
you
having
on.
me.
I kind of enjoy having other paranormal groups on just to learn different things. Or, do we come to the same answers, just different ways? Like we all go a different road, but we still end up in the middle with the same type of outcome. Um, and I like starting off the show a little bit about kind of asking just how did you get into the paranormal? What piqued that interest? And, where are you at now? Is it to the point where you're trying to find even more answers, or are you now just kind of doing it because it became an addiction?
Well, I got into it probably about the time I turned 21. I had a paranormal experience. My grandma passed away, and I seen her appear to me in a church where I used to go every Sunday for church after I got baptized. She looked younger than she did when she passed away. Didn't look like she was ailing or anything like that. She walked in like she was probably early 20s, late 20s, about the time she got married to my grandpa. And she sat down next to me. She said, "Shawn, don't you ever worry about a thing. And you're going to make it." And ever since then, everything started peaking for me. So I got curious about a lot of things. And throughout the years, I kind of pushed some things away and kind of got scared of some things. And then I got back into it a little bit. Started going back to church all the time. And I would have some dreams that would actually start coming true all the time. And that kind of scared me away. And then about 3.5 years ago, I finally accepted it, and I said, I'm going to figure this out. I want answers, and I want to understand everything that I possibly can.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like a common thing for a lot of people getting into the paranormal, whether it was when they were younger or something happened in their life to kind of start going, okay, what's out there? Because we're all very nosy and we want to know, answers to everything. And, when you're in the paranormal, it's one of those you get more mysteries than you do full answers. I think that keeps a lot of us, continuing on with these journeys.
Oh, most definitely. Like I said, about 3.5 years ago, I joined a team, and I was very fortunate to have a mentor that was on the team that was a Reiki master, and she taught me quite a bit of things, and I started learning and etc. So that really helps me a lot when I'm out on investigations.
Oh yeah. So when you guys are going out on an investigation, is there some type of ritual or prayers or something you do before you start investigating?
I actually have a young team that just started this year because I was on another team for a couple of years prior. And normally I'll make sure they have their obsidian with them or something that they would use for protection, or I'll write a symbol on them, like an Egyptian symbol. I'll put on some of the younger ones just in case we come across things that I'm not really sure of.
So here's the question to ask. So when you guys go into an investigation, whether it's, a private to help a family or anything like that, do you guys prepare yourself to, and I'm talking mentally mainly of, because we always hear in a lot of locations, everything is, rainbows and unicorns, but then start discovering there's a little bit of a darker side to those. Is there things that you guys
Mm-hmm.
kind of talk about ahead of time? How do you approach all of that?
We'll talk about what possibly could be because I've talked to the client prior, and then we'll talk about what could possibly happen and things that could happen. We always go in not thinking the worst or anything like that. We just want to go in to find out the answers. So we'll start setting up, and then we'll start getting the information that we find and start putting it together. Um, and then we'll come up with a conclusion for that as to what we think it is or how we're going to deal with what's there. But yeah, definitely, I'll talk to the client prior so I at least know what my team's getting into, because I never want my team to walk into something they can't handle either. So,
Yeah, that's definitely a thing, when we do our privates, we have to think about it not just on the spiritual side, because when these people are calling for help, they've already passed their max, so you've got a lot of emotional distress and anger and everything else going on. So, we always try to prepare for that too from the living, not just the spirit side, to, kind of figure
right.
out what are the components that's bringing all this out. And that's really the hardest part because you don't know what you're walking into.
Yeah, very true. Safety, like I said, is the number one priority. I always make sure that my team's paired up with somebody when they're in a resident's house, so they're never by themselves. Um, Also, like I said, we'll start collecting information and talking to the individuals themselves and kind of feeling things out, because I also noticed a lot, and you have as well. Sometimes people can manifest this stuff by the things they do themselves, and then you have to put the puzzle pieces together to figure out if it's them that's actually manifesting this and where it's coming from, or if it's actually something from the property or the house or something that actually happened there prior before they ever moved there.
Well, yeah, I mean, you do run into a lot of the self manifestation, because as soon as something goes wrong, when you start putting emotions into anything, it starts manifesting a lot, which I found out, you run into that a lot more. When you're going in
Mm-hmm.
there and you're starting to see certain dark shadows, you can kind of tell with that umbilical type of thing, that, okay, it's attached to somebody here in the house and they're just making it stronger, which then also can give you almost like poltergeist type of activity in a home. And
Very
That is
true.
one of the really bad things that I have noticed, that when you're trying to discuss that with them, nobody wants to hear that they have something to do with it, you know? There's been a lot of shows I've talked, like Everybody Blames Demons, and it's kind of like, well, sometimes you gotta look in that mirror.
Right. I mean, demons to me are very, very rare to find.
Yes.
Um, but like I said, if somebody was actually doing something there on the property prior, like playing with Ouija boards, opening up things they don't understand, people keep talking negative all the time, etc. That brings a lot of negativity into the house and a lot of negative energy where things could actually manifest as well, and they don't even realize they're doing it.
Yeah, you run into that a lot. Um, we're talking about the privates and things like that. Have you ever come up with anything that you actually were in a home, you're doing this investigation, and you're finding out they're dabbling in the dark stuff? And how does yourself and your team end up protecting yourselves and talking to those people about, here's why these things could be happening?
Um, Normally, I figure out sometimes before I even get in there if they've actually been dabbling with darker stuff just by the way they talk, or I'll look around their residence and start seeing things like books of magic in the bookcase or etc. And me being the way I am, because I can feel negative energy when it appears really bad, I'll warn my teams like, hey guys, we got something down here that is really negative, and this may be stirred up by one of the clients themselves by practicing things they're still not understanding or still dabbling with, or whatever they're trying to learn themselves. But a lot of that will come out very negative because, like I said, they still don't understand it.
Yeah, I have noticed more and more of that happening. And I've been kind of looking at the sense of, so many people are looking to find something, and that's something meaning like empty, the empty void they might be feeling, or where do I fit in? And I've noticed more and more people are kind of dabbling in a little bit of everything. Where is it? Is it more spiritual side that I need to do it, or this other side? And it seems like we're getting more and more portals opened because of this.
Mm-hmm.
And things of, even in locations in different areas, it just kind of is one of those where you're like, okay, now we're starting to get portals open just randomly. And it almost looks like Swiss cheese in different areas.
Right. Especially, when you walk in, you'll see mirrors facing each other back to back, or like facing each other out in general, or they can see each other, and that opens up a lot of portals as well. And then if you find out that their property actually lays on a ley line, which also manifests energy from the earth, that kind of compounds the situation sometimes as well. And like I said, some people don't understand what ley lines are, or even if they're under the house.
Yeah, and we've talked about it a lot here on the show too. We have to remember, the land was here a lot longer than we have. So a lot of times the
Oh,
structural
most definitely.
things, yeah, they're just on top of this stuff. So, when the dabbling starts of any way, and again, a lot of it is very innocent. People are trying to find,
Mm-hmm.
where do they fit in? And so they're trying different things, because especially with social media and TV, whether it's a paranormal investigator, or it's psychic mediums, or Reiki masters, or any type of spiritual things, tarot readers, somebody trying to find their way will try to jump in all of those sectors to see, where do I fit in? And then when you're looking at the energy of our land and like you said, the ley lines and different things, it just becomes that perfect storm.
Oh yes, most definitely. We come across one of the residents, like you said, that was dabbling in magic, has a dark essence in her house, or a spirit, I should say. There was also a portal there as well that we closed down at one time. And also they were playing with Ouija board, which we took the Ouija board, buried it in salt. And they still have activity today, and they keep wondering why. And I was like, okay, well, we've told you you shouldn't be doing things like this anymore, and this is why you keep having activity, you know. But yeah, it's crazy that even if you give them the advice of things not to do, they still are so curious and keep doing it. It's going to cause some damage in the long run.
Yeah, it's really hard because I get a lot of those calls, and those calls are always, out of desperation. And, you want to jump up and help a lot of people. But at the same time, there's times where you're like, well, everything you're telling me, and you pretty much knew you were doing it, how can you help? Because we talk a lot about free will, and you're having free will
Right.
doing what you're doing. And because the turnout wasn't what you expected, it's a lot harder to flip that script because you did it with full intentions and what you wanted to do. It wasn't out of just desperation of, oh my God, I tried this because of, A, B, and C. Because I've had people call and say, well, I think I have spirits here. And so what I did was I used a recorder or download an app just to start talking to it. And it always blows
Mm-hmm.
my mind when I hear that because so my home, and you can answer this for yourself too, is my sanctuary. Those kind of things don't go on in
Mm-hmm.
my home. I don't allow it. My home is protected and everything because I got to have a safe haven to go to. And these people are so open in
I
their own home. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, actually, I've got like 6 spirits that's actually in my house that we're on common ground. You know, they're not bothering anything. They don't hurt anybody, but sometimes they'll let me know that they're here and etc. But the bad ones, when they do come into my territory, like you said, I push them out with the energy that the Reiki master showed me how to do. And I get rid of all the bad ones. But if they're not bothering anything, I don't have a problem with them, being here. So that's one thing that some people have seen. I mean, I've had my daughter come to my house and actually seen things come off the wall. And she's like, Dad, you need to do something here. And I was like, it's fine. I said, you'll be fine. I said, it's just a little child playing with the things because it's toys. They're pulling off the wall. I got collector's items. They like to pull off the wall. And they're just sitting there checking it out and playing it. They're not harming anybody. So I kind of let it be at that. But anything bad, which I've encountered, like I said, followed me home one time, and I actually got rid of it, and it's no longer in the house. It's in a crystal across the street, buried in the ground.
Wow. So when you're, like you said, getting rid of, spirits or whatever, if, they're not doing the right things, let's put it that way.
Right.
What are your feelings about trapping them? And the reason I'm asking is because I do hear it a lot about like putting them in crystals or putting them in this and throwing them in that. Have you ever
Mm-hmm.
thought about moving them onto the light or guiding them, or are you just talking about like the real bad ones that won't go anywhere?
The real bad ones that won't go anywhere at all and are just super stubborn, those are the ones that I get rid of that way.
Okay.
Since I've done that a few times before, and I've been taking shaman classes for the last maybe almost a year now, might be slightly over a year. I've learned more to do balance and more reasonable things to persuade them to leave without having to do that anymore. So that's a better thing at times than having to entrap them.
Yeah, and I just was asking, because I hear it a lot. A lot of people say it, and it kind of makes you wonder because I know there's a lot you have to pretty much like push out, or be very stern
Hmm.
with. Um, and I
Right.
was just curious what your thought was on that because, to me, trapping them even more seemed very bad. Now, you talking about negative and being bad, that makes so much more sense. A lot of people are talking it about all
Right.
spirits. They talk about all of them. And
Right.
and it always kind of,
Right.
I don't know. I can honestly tell you it really pisses me off talking about we do it to all spirits. I've had some of those
Yeah.
conversations.
There's no need. There's no need to do it to all spirits. Like I said,
Yeah,
like the ones that run around in my house, they're not bothering anything. They're not causing any problems with me, and I know they're here. So
yeah.
let them be. I don't have a problem with that. But if you're in here wrecking havoc,
Oh,
causing
yeah.
problems, not wanting to leave, yeah, you will leave. You will be gone. And that's the ones that I do that to. Like I said, since
Yeah.
I've learned more of the shaman type ways of, I'll kind of give them options. You can either go above, you can go out into neutral ground, or you can go below. You can take your pick, but you need to leave.
Now, see, that to me makes more sense because, there are times you have to take desperate measures to figure the things out. And thank you for answering that.
Right.
Like I said, a lot of people or teams or paranormal, I've heard it throughout all the time, but they're like, "Oh, I do it all the time. I make jars and I do this and that." And I'm just like, "Well, wow. How would you feel if somebody did that to you?" And I guess it's just like a different mesh. Now, if you're nasty and negative and all that, you can bet your bottom dollar that I will trap you and toss you. So,
Right.
but yeah, it's just very,
Exactly.
yeah, because it's like, where did you learn this? Where does this become a thing? You know, if you
Hmm.
have something, well, I trapped it in a box in this room. Well, why wouldn't you remove the box and take it somewhere else and try to release them to where they need to go, or have that
Right.
conversation? So, because I feel like if they do end up getting out from there, if they were negative before, they're probably going to come tenfold, and that's what worries
Well,
me too.
one thing I do with them is I'll actually encase them in salt before I get rid of them, and then I'll bury them. So the salt itself will actually dissipate that energy,
Nice, nice,
and
very
that's
nice.
and that's and that's a good thing. And sometimes I'll even put them someplace even the container would break. It would be in a water type situation where the water would actually cleanse it because of the movement of where it's at. It's constantly moving, it's cleansing it, like you would cleanse your regular crystals from getting bad energy off them to begin with, or put them out in the moonlight, or taking a clear crystal, setting them next to it, or a selenite crystal and putting that next to them to recharge them.
Okay. So your thought on this just before we take a break real quick. Do you think if they ever got out, hypothetically ask a question, do you think they would go back to the place where they were to begin with, or do you think they would move on somewhere else?
I think they'd be afraid to go back sometimes because if the person called us to get rid of them to begin with, they might not come back. And again, people are stubborn and spirits are like us. It's a possibility.
Okay. And I've always wanted to ask that question, and you're like my first guest that I was able to put that in there. So thank you so much because I've always been curious about the answer. I don't have a real answer, but it always made me think
Right.
when we try to move them on somewhere, do they end up going back to the same place, or do they take that free will and go wherever they really want to go? You know what I mean? So, but thank you
The
so much
wise
for
choice
that.
would be take free will.
You're right. We will be back here in just a couple of minutes. We're just going to take a short break and we'll get back with Mr. Shawn Ellis and let's discuss some more of the paranormal.
This September 6th through the 13th, join with like-minded souls in the experience of a lifetime on the Royal Caribbean Ovation of the Seas as we travel from Seattle to Alaska. Internationally renowned researchers, investigators, experiencers, authors, holistic healers, contactees, spiritual luminaries will sail on an extraordinary voyage of transformation. This cruise will explore UFOs, alien contact, cover-ups, ancient mysteries, the paranormal, holistic healing, and spirituality. Experience engaging lectures, one-on-one sessions, private, custom-tailored excursions, and a nightly UFO watch. The cruise is booking up fast. Go to contactatsea.com and be sure to mention the UNX Network when you book. That's contactatsea.com or phone 336-749-1219. That's 336-749-1219. While most near-death experiencers return to this plane of existence with alluring tales of their time spent in the presence of the divine, what happens when one crosses the veil into the afterlife, into the void? In the new book, Dying to Meet Them, Mindy Toutfest describes her journey to the afterlife after a devastating aneurysm, how a strange turn of events would lead her to spiritual growth, divine healing, UFO experiences, and a greater understanding of the universe. Get your copy of Dying to Meet Them today at Amazon.com or visit unxmedia.com for more information on this book and more amazing selections from UNX Media Publishing at unxmedia.com.
This is Margie Kay, and I'd like to say thank you to all of our KUNX show hosts, staff, listeners, and viewers for making us number one on Paranormal Talk Radio.
And welcome back, everyone. Tonight's show, I am actually talking a little bit about the paranormal and how things are done a little different. What are your objective type of, ideas and things? And I want to thank my guest who is with me tonight, Mr. Shawn Ellis, as we discuss a little bit more of we were talking more of the private sector of doing the paranormal, people calling in, things like that. I'd like to kind of flip it around a little bit to now public locations. We go
Okay.
into a lot of those, and, you know, it seems like every story I hear, every door I walk through is, yes, here's the history. Every spirit in this place is just as happy-go-lucky, and they're great, and they're playful, and so on and so on and so on. And then as you're spending some time there, you're noticing a little bit of darker stuff is there that, is just kind of pushing your buttons right now, which maybe that's what they think is playful.
Mm-hmm.
But what are your thoughts
Mm-hmm.
of every owner of a location doing the same exact thing?
I don't go into residentials or even businesses thinking that there's something there. I want to go in trying to find out what they see themselves. I want to kind of start out from scratch, even though that I've talked to them prior to understand what's going on there. I want to feel it for myself. I want to determine it and how it is and what they're feeling or what they're seeing from my point of view, and then compare it to what they've experienced. Sometimes I think a lot of places are overhyped because they want people to come there, which it's good, but it's good for their business. But also,
Yeah.
let's keep reasonable, as in the fact, every time you go out on an investigation, you might not get something every time. You might not get anything at all. And then next time you go out, you might get a lot of activity. So you got to base it just on the fact of going in there just to find out what you find out for yourself and not rely on everything what people say.
So what are your thoughts of going to a public location and you're doing the investigation, excuse me, and you're finding out there's a little bit more darker stuff. Now, when I say darker stuff, just for the listeners to know, a lot of these locations have so many people that come and go. They rent these places out. They're doing a lot of investigations, different things to try to get spirit communication, and things can be dropped off. Energies can be just, zapped into them. So even if a location started off very lighthearted, it can start changing as time goes by. So we're not just saying, that this has always been a dark place, but it can start changing the way things are there. But what are your thoughts when something like that's happening, but yet it's still getting pushed out to the public as, oh, they're just fun loving. Here's the history of this person. So you talk to them just this way.
Right. Actually, I experienced somebody was actually talking to or not a residential, but a business place here on a podcast here not long ago. And they were saying one of the people that come and visit them got pushed down. Now, when you got stuff like that in your building and the person that's coming to visit to see this for themselves is getting pushed down, you're putting them in harm's way. I don't think that's very cool. Because when people come in there and they don't understand what's going on, it's just going to put them in danger. And especially if the person or the place that's actually hosting it knows it's there, knows what it can do, that's pretty risky in itself. And, that's not very cool in my book.
Yeah, and see, and I think about it too, people like both the light and the dark. You know what I mean? If they get a little bit of that
Hmm.
darkness because it kind of gets that adrenaline flowing, and then you have the lighthearted where they're playing games with
Hmm.
you. And it always baffles me that a lot of places won't say, hey, you could get a little bit of both. Don't know what the atmosphere is going to be tonight. And then kind of,
Right.
keeping it on that even scale of you can have it either way. Depending on what you're pushing out is what you're going to get in. And I've noticed that just is not
One of the
happening.
things, yeah. I guess what is a good thing for me anyway is that the fact I learned both sides. I learned the dark and the light. I keep a balance, and I find out the more balanced you are and the more energy that you can put off, the better off you are. And to understand both sides of it is better than only understanding one, because then if something happens, then you kind of have an idea of what to do or where to go to get advice, or if you need help to take care of an issue there as well. So to me, balance is the key. But like I said, when you've got just regular civilians coming into a location and they're not forewarned that things could happen that could actually hurt them, or possibly, that's not good for anybody in the long run. I don't want to see anybody hurt. I don't want to see any clients hurt. I don't want to see anybody that has a place like that, get into a lot of trouble for that either.
So, what would you say is one of your most, maybe not scariest, but your most making you think twice of things experience?
I have one I could say was the most intense that I've ever been on. When I was on the previous team, there was a location here in the town that I live in. Another team was called in after they found a half a body in the house. And the other team was called in, and they went in and they did their investigation. And they said there's a lot of stuff here we don't understand, and ended up calling the team that I used to be on to go help them. We were there for like 12 hours during the investigation. We found things from John Wayne Gacy up in the attic to Charles Manson articles. Some other stuff I'm not even going to say on here at all because it's not good at all. Luminol we sprayed on the wall. We found blood stains still on the wall in some places. And that was one of the most intense investigations I've ever had. And then it made me just want to know even more. Instead of being scared or freaking out, I wanted to know why. This spirit happened to be bouncing back from me and one of the other team's people. And we figured that out because we had high energy. And we end up taking that and entrapping that spirit and getting rid of it. And as soon as we did, it came over our ovulus of 13 children's names that was being held there by that spirit. And, knowing that we got rid of that and some of those spirits got free to go to where they need to go was a good thing.
And was this all done in that 12-hour period, or was this one of those locations you had to keep going back to make sure it got done?
No, we were there for 12 hours straight.
Oh, wow.
And it was the most intense investigation I have ever been on.
Oh, I can just imagine. You probably slept for a week.
Yeah, it was pretty draining.
Yeah.
But that just made me want to know more and understand more. So then I started taking shaman classes, and like I said, I have a a mentor from the old team that I was on that's a Reiki master that's taught me a lot of really cool stuff, and it keeps me balanced. And like I said, to me, balance is the key to everything.
Yeah, it is. But for some people, it's really hard because
It
again, when
is.
we're talking people who I would say would be maybe spiritually lost, it's hard to find that balance, and it's really hard to figure out what the path is and why you should be on that path. Because I feel like in the paranormal world, especially a lot of us who have teams who have done it for a while, who look at things, we look at this as um, finding answers and giving a voice for those who haven't had a voice, and
Right.
so you're kind of trying to hold that balance, but sometimes it's a little hard because, when you're finding out, like you said, 13 children trapped there, as spirits.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I look at that, I think of it in the sense of, okay, those are 13 children, whether it's spirit or not spirit. And to be held captive in that
Right.
sense, and trying to figure out how do we navigate around those, because you think about it, your emotions start getting in there too, because whether you're angry or sad or different things, we have emotions. And, really trying to figure those out, I can see in a lot of people who are truly doing it for the right reasons, that balance is pretty hard for a lot of folks doing it.
Right. And especially, like I said, when you're trying to learn one, like the dark side, or learn the lighter side of things, I mean, you can be easily coaxed to one side or the other. And it's hard to maintain that balance sometimes because we'll see that energy from that side. It's like, oh, wait a minute, this is tempting, or oh, this is tempting. But to me, like I said, I've been blessed to have the marks of balance when I, like I said, from my Reiki master when I was going through also my Menaki rights, to help me stay balanced. So I am very thankful that she gave those rights to me when she did, because they have helped tremendously.
Yeah, I mean, that is something very special. Um, have you ever been to something that was so dark, not demonic, but so dark that it had you questioning your own thought process of how to figure out how to navigate through it?
I've come across a place that it was so heavy you couldn't breathe, but the more I sat there and started balancing myself, the more I looked at it as a challenge to see what it is. Why is it there? Um, I guess I thirst for that knowledge and to understand to why it's there and why it's causing the issues it is, and and to be able to help the people out that were our clients or the person that asked us to come check things out. I want to make sure they're safe. I want to make sure their kids are safe and stuff like that. So I haven't yet come across that. There may be a time in the future, it's possible, but at this point in time, I have not questioned anything yet. I've sat and figured it out between me and my team members, and then we figured out a solution. I mean, I've had some team members actually go out to the car and sit down and chill, which is fine, go have a break because the energy there is so intense. But, to keep them out of harm's way or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I normally sit there so far at this point in time till I figure it out.
So when you're working on any of these privates and you're doing that investigation part, and I'm talking both whether it's the paranormal side or all the other stuff that follows with it, have you ever had to go and
Mm-hmm.
talk to anybody and say, here's the reason why, one, bad things are being done here. And you're finding out that the bad things that are being done are exactly the same that happened back in the life of the spirits that were there. And how do you
Mhm.
approach that with those people?
I just sit down and have to explain to them, the fact that these people was doing these bad things, and that was their lifestyle. They're not going to change. Once they passed over, they're probably going to stay the same unless they have any remorse whatsoever, and then they would move on. But for some reason, they want to stay there and cause havoc or a problem. And we can come up with a solution of how they want it done. We could cleanse the house, we can bless the ground, and we can do other things to get rid of it. And so far, the things that we've come up with, or I've asked about, like I said, I've got people, if I do need to talk to before I do something, I have them in my phone where I could call them and say, hey, this is the situation. Is this the right solution? And they'll say yes, no, you're on the right track, or they'll say, hey, try this. So I am very blessed to have people like that around me if I do come across a situation like that, where I can stop and actually explain to the people as well and get rid of the problem as well.
So I'm going to go a little deeper on this, if you're okay with that. You're doing
Okay.
a house investigation, okay? And you're finding out the spirits that are there is an angry man who was always beating on his wife or something back in those days, which was very common. We find that out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And things were going well until that type of stuff was going on in the house now. So it revved up the energy and the negative of that man from the past because it's happening again. And you find out about this. How do you approach that situation? Because to get rid of those spirits, something would have to happen in this life at the same time.
Yeah, definitely something drastically would have to change. Um, you just have to sit down and talk with the person. Sometimes that almost sounds to me like it would be attaching to one of the people that's the residents there, and the situation is recurring, like you said. And if it's an attachment, we can get rid of the attachment. But like I said, there's no guarantee sometimes if the energy is that powerful that it might not come back. But like I said, we'll turn around, we'll bless the ground, we'll cleanse the house. And like I said, we need to sit down and talk to the people and say, this has got to stop. The negativity in this house has to stop. And then when this stops, it may stop altogether as well. And hopefully, if you don't get called back, which would be a good thing, and things are taken care of, but if you get called back and you're still seeing the situation, I would have to talk to one of my friends that's in a higher place as an authority, like a cop, and say, hey, something's going on here that's more than what is, and we couldn't take care of this, but it's probably more the present person than it is the spirit that's there. Because I do have a couple friends that know that I'm a paranormal investigator and understands when I talk to them about this, that, okay, this is this and this is that. And some people might not have that opportunity to have things like that as well, to be able to explain that to somebody else that's in that situation and to be able to help them and get the help they need.
No, thank you for answering that. I know that's kind of hard because if you're really doing the paranormal like some of us do, and you go to some, again, when we're talking about this kind of helping families out, sometimes those are the underlining things that are causing some of that,
Exactly.
like you said, self-manifestation type of poltergeist things. And where where do we stand as paranormal investigators? What line do we not cross and say, okay, wait a minute, this is happening because of what's happening in present day, which is just turning up, and churning things from the past.
Right.
And, um, to know that you got a little bit of both. And I loved your answer, because sometimes it is an attachment, or sometimes it's because it's already happening, that it stirred up what's other energies were there from prior. And, people don't understand, when we're doing these investigations in these private homes, like I always tell everybody, we're not just dealing with what is not seen. We're also dealing with what's in front of us, and you have to be able to navigate that. You can't go in as a professional or a counselor unless you really are, but you can listen and you can try to
Right.
debunk everything else. But then you got to be smart enough as, an investigator, or even the team itself, to know, okay, wait a minute, this is going a little further. We need to call other people in, because this is kind of out of our realm, and I've been
Mm-hmm.
hearing a lot more of this kind of stuff, and it's been really crazy to hear it. And it's been blowing my mind that, just because you call yourself a paranormal investigator, you're going to say everything is spirit, and not kind of look in between those lines. So thank you again for being very honest and answering that question. I know some people are like, oh my God, I don't want to answer something like that. So,
I mean,
uh,
people manifest what they speak, and they don't realize it, and their actions, speak for themselves. And when you eliminate the other situations, there's only one other answer. You can't sit there and let somebody go through what they're going through when you can help them out in another way. So something has to be done regardless.
yeah. And I mean, because there are times you get calls that talk about there's such dark energies in their home that it's making them have self-doubt about themselves. And, it keeps wanting them and tells them that they're no good. When you start seeing that, you go in, you evaluate what's in there. And if there's nothing in there, that's when you have to start thinking of ways to say, other things to help somebody. And again, people would
Exactly.
rather blame it on spirits or demons or anything else than actually taking the moment to look at themselves for any type of healing. And,
Right.
we
And
have, go ahead.
sometimes, sometimes in those cases, and I'll say this, I've dealt with this in my past, as me being myself, of a situation like this. You never want it to come down to being a physical attack. If you can resolve it without having physicality, it's probably the best way to do it. I mean, I've seen people, like I said, be punished and abused and stuff like that. And I got a heart. I can't sit back and watch somebody be abused. And I don't believe in abuse. I don't believe guys beating on women. I don't believe guys beating on kids. I don't believe in the fact of being sexually abused or anything like that either. I mean, when it comes down to the safety of a human life, that's more important than anything. And you need to reach out to somebody to get them help.
I totally, totally agree. And again, it's not saying that there can't be an attachment or there can't be something else for it. But, we have too many teams that are out there, or whatever you want to call, just people getting together, whatever it is, that will not go past that. Everything is all about the spirits in the house doing it, and then it can become a bigger problem. So, if I'm going to call myself a paranormal investigator, yes, I'm going to look for that. But if I know there's an underlining thing that's causing that, I'll be the first to say, can we have an honest discussion? And then kind of go from there.
Right.
So hear it coming from you is very refreshing. Um, and sometimes people don't like to hear that hard
I mean,
stuff, because
and
they,
also,
huh? Go ahead.
I was going to say, and also other factors that you got to keep an eye on too is their drug use in the house, is there alcohol involved, is things being brought in here that shouldn't be brought in here. Think that's got to be looked at as well. I mean, you can't just sit back and not figure out what's going on there.
I absolutely agree. Well, Shawn, before we leave, I'm just going to remind all the listeners, you guys seen it earlier on our break, on October 11th through the 13th in Springfield, Missouri. It is going into the Rabbit Hole XCon 2024. I will be there as one of the speakers. Also, will be there to talk to anybody that is coming out to see all of us. We'll have other speakers like Micah Hanks and, of course, myself, Margie Kay, Peter Robbins, a lot of different people. But great thing about the XCon is it's not all about the paranormal. It is your cryptids, your UFOs, a little bit for everybody. An amazing time. So remember, October 11th through the 13th in Springfield, Missouri. Shawn, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out and being on the show tonight. I appreciate all the honesty that you had. Thank you so much for that. And for all my listeners,
Well, thank you for having me on the show.
and for all the listeners out there, till next time, I'll see you in the dark.